Welcome to our Hatchery Live. My name is Jose Leal, and I'm here today with my partner, Matt Perez. And today our guest is Cristina Imre. Did I pronounce that right, Cristina?
I think it's the best pronunciation during the last 6 months in my course. So perfect.
And you're with Quantum Winds. So, Cristina, you're over in Romania, just to be
Yeah.
clear, and we're sitting here in the Silicon Valley, but you do a lot of work with North America.
Most of my work is in North America. Yes.
So, tell us about what you do and the work that you're doing.
I'm very happy to be here with you both. That's my first thing I would love to see. I watched a couple of your podcasts and love to be a little bit more controversial and bring the truth out today, where we are living in such a complex world. And I think that this will be one of our touch points. I'm currently an executive coach and I work with startup founders, especially in tech. So Silicon Valley would be part of it, and helping those kind of revolutionary, deserving founders to reach the level of a dragon. Because today we start to not talk so much about unicorns, but dragons. And so I'm that kind of secret weapon in the back, helping them to reach their goals with sanity in check and everything in check, to not lose their drive and joy also through the journey. And also, I work with corporate executives as well, and CEOs. Those are my target market, and most are from the US. Also, I come with a serial entrepreneurship background. I had 6 startups as founder, co-founder, and also in tech during the last years. So, as I like to talk about myself, having 2 decades in the trenches, understanding human nature and business combined, because basically my journey was through that.
Very cool. So, our topic today, um, you had talked about working with people in a more human way or leveraging people in a more human way. Can you tell us what you mean by that?
I think the secret power lays in understanding humans like we are, with our needs and at the personal level. And this is something that today it's so much missed. And like, take us here. If we are like robots or AI trying to emulate AI today and be as clever and smart and with such a good memory, we wouldn't transmit anything. But we do have this human needs that are need to be amped inside the equation. And every time since I started to understand how important human nature understanding is from high school, when I had a revelation, everything shifted, because I was interested in business as a true born entrepreneur, I would say. But I saw how unstable we are and how shallow we are. And I knew that we can do better. And I saw the different facets of the human being, and I couldn't understand why we behave this way in 1 second, another way in one, and then we change into a demon or a saint. And I wanted to understand that and then to leverage that into the workspace. And today, I think it's more important than ever, and you might contradict me here, that we became too complex, too complicated. Our world became too complicated, and we forgot about the human nature, the basic elements like the Maslow's pyramid, what we do need to have to be happy, productive, have a fulfilled life without being miserable. What do you think?
I think you're right on. So, no argument there. I'm sorry to say. I couldn't agree more. I think your point about human nature being at the root of what we need to deal with is why we called it radical. Radical means root, and the root of work is really human nature. And if we don't understand human nature, we don't understand work. And so, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to have much of a debate here about that specific topic. We may disagree about how we do it, but what we need to do, I don't think is something we'd argue about. So, what are you doing? How do you see that problem? So, let's frame it as a problem. Um, the problem being that we're not seeing human nature as part of how we organize work and how we think about work. Is that fair to say that that's the problem?
Yes, I think that we as humans went through different cycles and in different speed levels. And if we consider what happened during the Industrial Revolution, it was a different kind of aspect where human beings needed to focus on different ways to integrate work into their lives and also their kids and their families. And then it came the new internet and the digital revolution, and we are in where everything got to a different level of speed, and we got too many things on our plate. So, and I would say here what we got are privileges. So many things got to our hands. Our lives became so easy from so many different perspectives compared to our ancestors, our grandmother, grandfather, so even our parents' lives. And we don't know how to handle this. And you can see this with the young generation. We have so many opportunities today, and this makes us miserable. So that is the paradox. We are living in the most abundant world during our, let's say, lifetime as human species, but we are unhappy. And so this needs to be addressed, because otherwise now it comes the AI aspect, and it's a different threat to human nature, human needs, and we might lose ourselves in this translation. And here I would love to intervene, and we to intervene more. Hey, stop, stop. What we can do as humans to not lose ourselves in the process of becoming, of having everything around us.
So let me maybe ask a couple of questions around that, because again, I couldn't agree more that what you've just identified to me is the most critical part of human nature, and the work that we're doing, which is that we've moved to a world where we have so much more time on our hands that we're now having to distract ourselves from that time. We don't know how to deal with our time. It was different when all our time was spent feeding ourselves, clothing ourselves, covering, building shelters. But now we have time to spend in ways that we've built distractions to maintain that time. Is
Many
that a
would
fair way to?
disagree with this, because you're saying like we have more time, and most people would say we don't have time anymore for anything. The thing is, we have much more resources and opportunities. And what you said, it's exactly right, distractions. And we need to choose between these distractions. And we don't have a guideline. It's just too soon in our history, ancestry. That's why I like to touch human nature as a combination of all the sciences, more or less scientifically proven, to understand where we are as a species. And this is one of the things. We don't have yet a guideline that it's proven to work when you have everything around you and all the resources to compete in the marketplace, to have a wonderful life, and whatever you are on this world. And also to
I
work
want
with
to
the
I want to stop
inequalities.
you. I want to stop you there for a second. What do you mean by work? Is that what do you mean by work?
Yeah, this is a very good question. Here we could debate a lot. What is the importance of work in our life? How we
Well,
can.
what do you mean by work? Is that the 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 thing that you go out every morning? Well, not anymore, but that you work at somebody else's company
to
or
to provide for yourself and your family.
okay,
You,
so
yeah,
okay, all right, that's
to
better.
get the financial means and resources to provide for yourself and your family.
That's good. Thank you.
You're welcome. And so being here, it's very important for us to start to have a guideline about okay, now we are living in a different world, what we do with what we have, but not forgetting from where we are coming from and what are our basic needs to be met.
And is that the work that you're doing? Is that our question number two is, what are you doing about that? So how are you um, taking that insight, that question that you've identified, that problem you identified, which in my book is the right question, is the right problem?
You know, as more I work, and with the years, I noticed that yes, this is basically my job, and I need to start to simplify things with my clients and the companies I work with, because we became so over complicated with systems, with structures, with what we need to do, competing with robots and computer, that we should do what they do anyway and will do better than us, not knowing how to leverage technology in our favor, seeing it as a threat, and also trying to compete with it as humans with other kind of capacities and abilities. And I would argue now, when I start to work with the client and the company, that okay, let's just start from scratch. Because you know, every time I start to work with someone, basically they will say, okay, executive coach with a serial entrepreneur background, cool, we will talk business, we will start business. It's almost never the case, because once I go to truly know at the personal level my clients, and this could be even at the company level, where I then have one-on-one conversation with leaders and executives from that company, all the time it gets back to personal, all the time. And I see that's the main issue, because those fundamental needs, including belongingness, are not met enough. And I might have executives where you might wonder, they have so many responsibilities on their shoulders, and you might work on negotiations on what they need to do tomorrow or next, how to solve problems, how to manage a company or people under them. And no, they have completely different other focus, not at the beginning. Not at the beginning, because it's about the status, again, a status problem. You need, especially as a man, to show how tough you are, how much of a leader you are, that your preoccupations are very serious business-like. And so I do have my own methods to extract the truth and go to the depth of what they truly need and where they are currently. 90% of the time they have a personal issue to be solved, and those are coming from psychological needs, or family needs, or friendship needs, or other kind of needs. And then those will create the chain reaction that once they are solved, the business problems will just dilute many times themselves naturally, because they are on a better ground mentally and emotionally.
So you're saying people are working too hard? The people that you
Oh,
work
absolutely.
too hard?
Yes, and they have so many expectations to be perfect. We have the expectation to be perfect now. Just look at the internet, right? You should have a perfect profile all over the social media where you have a profile. You to look good, what you are posting. Everything is about branding today, and everything can be now so much leveraged with some help. And so everyone sees the beautiful, perfect side of yours from the exterior. And this is one of the main causes of unhappiness, because you believe that you are the lamest person in the world, and your life is just so boring and nothing compared to others. And that's a huge lie. We are living a huge lie.
That is a
Posing.
beautiful way to say that.
Yeah. That's what
Yeah.
that's what my kids would call posers. Yeah, there's a lot of I feel one way in the inside, but I project a different thing. But I agree with you that the thing of people are working too hard to trying to think the whole company out, and that's not good.
And as you mentioned, your kids, what do you think it would be the most important factor to now, I don't even know, educate our kids to be ready for the future, with all of these things on the plate, having all the opportunities, the AI, but also climate issues, conflicts in the world. What would we do? What should we do with our current generation to make them as ready as possible to change the current things?
Stop looking at the lens of the world and start looking at the lens of yourself.
Nice. How about you, Matt? What would you do?
Yeah, I'm not as big a fan of the individual as a thing unto itself. The individual exists, but a community has a lot of knowledge, and that's, if you were the only person on an island, you wouldn't need language. You wouldn't need any of the things that we deal with. Life would be very simple. We don't live in an island We live now with 8 billion people on this earth, and the only earth we have. And we need to think of how do we work together. That's why I asked you about the question about work, because I don't think of work as just survival. Work is what we do with other people, and sometimes that contributes to our survivability and sustenance and stuff like that. But sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you do it for not directly. You do it for artistic reasons. You do it for because it feels right. But it's the community is the important thing. The individual is too, but we can't forget the community.
No.
The thing about my oldest child is a co-author of the book that we wrote, so I'm not so worried about him. I'm not worried about the other one either. But but you're right. The fact that we have so many things available to us is a problem. Simplicity part is very important. So
And this is not something that we should just cut. So someone to misunderstand me that, okay, now we should just restrict everything and go back to communistic type of economies where you cut out the resources. No, but you do need the guidance. And as a child grows up and needs the education from family and then school and society, the same way our current generation, especially the young ones, they do need some guidance and what direction to go and what it is important. Otherwise, that's why they are now so susceptible to suicide, depression, and anxiety. And they are looking for something else, not financial means, as we can see through the last statistics, but happiness, belongingness. They feel so lonely. And this is such, even CEOs I work with, entrepreneurs, it's one of the pandemics of our lives, feeling lonely, misunderstood because our communication went wrong at some point, became so shallow and so simplistic, and has nothing to do with me wanting to know you. And here we could just start to talk about the personal aspect. I truly want to know you, Jose, as a person, not just a co-host in this episode and then we say bye and everything cool and we never talk again. That's not value, you know?
Right. And the conversation, I mean, your point is super well made, as is Matt's. Matt's point around community is very valid. But community, I like to think of community as understanding myself and then understanding what I need from you, and the community, you doing the same thing in return. If I don't understand myself, and I am going around just doing what you do because that's emulating what everybody else is doing, that's what we've created. Everybody's emulating everybody else. I suspect when you talk to your founders, you find that they're doing what somebody else has done. They describe their products as this, but like that. In other words, they're describing it as what somebody else has done in many ways, right? And so
you mean they are not authentic enough?
They're not connected with themselves as much as they're connected with other people and other things that are happening. And so when they have a new idea, they can't frame it from themselves. They can only frame it from others because they're not in touch with where that idea came from. And I speak about this from my own perspective because as an entrepreneur, when I left corporate, what I did was start a couple of new startups with the external perspective rather than the internal perspective, which I had never done before. But I learned in corporate to actually think about, how am I going to exit this? How do I create it in order to prepare it for sale? How do I position it and do all the proper IP and all of that stuff for the exit, and not to produce it because I'm passionate about what I'm trying to do. So there's a difference between externalizing our reasons for doing things and internalizing those things. Do you agree with that, Cristina?
This is very interesting and deep discussion, what you're pinpointing now. You know what I've noticed many times, let's say there are amazing founders who have an idea and they create a startup around it. And they are working to bring this dream alive. And it might be very unique for their needs and what they discovered, but they become converted very soon once they hit the ground with financial needs. They need investors. Maybe the clients are not coming as soon as they wanted. Maybe they are not as good as marketing, as sales. They start to freak out and they start then to look outside. Okay, it sounds like I don't know what I'm doing. Let's see what can I do, what others are saying. And if they take also big amount of funds and they have a board and they need to comply and they have so many shareholders to satisfy at once, in usually at point number 2, year 2, many of these founders lost the initial idea, purpose of the company, and they start to get demotivated because the company doesn't resemble anymore with the initial vision. And so now this might be related to the huge percentage of the startups that fail.
I couldn't agree more. I think not only that, if they can jump that gap, that second year gap that you're describing, then they end up doing it on the metrics.
Exactly.
Right. So they become attached to the metrics that the board has defined, that the leadership team has defined, and now it's all about the metrics. And so they lose sight of the impact that they wanted to make in the first place, and they're just chasing metrics.
And they keep and they need to keep the confidence. That's why I am around year 2, 3, let's say seed above Series A or financial equivalent of that with the founders I work with, because they still have that confidence, and the tier 2, 3, it goes away if things are not met. And it's interesting because this I saw with corporate executives. If you see the turnaround with corporate executives, many stay 2, 3 years in a company and they move. It's not just because, okay, I had a mission and I solved it and I go to another company. But let's see, when I entered here, everyone saw me as the new CEO who has this vision, is powerful, is new, is interesting, mystical and so forth, has all the answers. And that starts to lose around year 2, 3. And so, okay, it's better now to move because that was my power now. And okay, they also have their shareholders, their board, and they just lose that ground of grit they had initially that could be similar to a startupper. Okay, now I need to move. So it's interesting because I saw these connections. I'm not sure if you saw something like similar.
Absolutely. I wonder, with your experience, because you've probably been in contact with more startups, diverse startups than I.
Yes.
With your experience, how many are actually able to stay connected to that initial passion through that gap of disconnecting? They're no longer the go-to guy in their mind. They lose that sense of themselves.
I would say this matches with the percentages of startup successes around, and even the investment percentages of 10%. 1 out of 10. Some, maybe 2, but closer to 1. 1 out of 10 startups. And this, again, it's so personal because it's directly correlated with the personality, the traits, the behaviors, and the strength, the backbone of the founders. If I also invested, so I was an investor, I was a venture partner, so I did a lot of things to understand this human nature and business combined, and it was intentional because I wanted to have the broad perspective. But also when I invested, and today, if I would go back to my investor hat, I hope I will soon, sooner than later, this would be my first thing I would look now, today, the founder. Not the idea as much and the potential of the market, because these are the two main things all the investors and ventures are looking today, the founders and how big the market is. And
Right.
it's growing, not decreasing. And so some have this, some favor founders, some the market, or both. For me, it would be the founder 80%, 80 today,
Mm-hmm.
if I would be to invest in a startup.
Matt, did you have any thoughts?
There was a comment that came online. He says, when they chase the metrics, they wind up working 24/7, affecting their relationships, families, etc. And that's what I meant by they're working too hard. So yeah, it absolutely happens. And really, what you're calling the metrics, they're all financial. It's how much money you're making, how many things you're selling, how many things can you count, and the thing that they brought to the party that made him powerful and all that stuff was not necessarily about money. Yeah, they wanted to be wealthy and do well and stuff like that because that's an important metric for people. But when it becomes nothing but the metric, that financial metric, is when things start affecting relationships and making you sick and things like that. And I'm speaking from experience. When you try to focus on that and say, I'm going to get really good at that, is when you fail the most. So we're close to the half hour. I don't know if you have any questions.
Yeah, I think we have a few more minutes, so let's maybe try to wrap this up. I want to get a sense of Cristina's vision for this. So we move towards understanding human nature. We connect people to themselves. We reduce the focus on the external metrics and the external concepts of why we're doing this. And where does that lead us? Please correct me if you think I'm wrong in what I've stated there, but
I do have some direct messages here. It's a pity we cannot discuss this more briefly, but basically it's about the connectivity and the way we see work and life. Because yes, we defined work at the beginning, Matt, and we had the different views around this, but we don't need to separate work and life. That's very, very important because our ancestors didn't. The tribes, and if we go through evolutionary psychology, because it's a lot in my work, also anthropology, to really understand where we are coming from, what work and why, from an evolutionary perspective, this was very, very key, and we didn't separate the two. In order to separate and just create that kind of life-work balance, for me, that's a big B, and it doesn't work because there are different parts of our lives. We do need to integrate them and see them as complex things. If I work with you too, Jose and Matt, and you are my coworkers, maybe I would love you to be integrated in my personal life and go with you to tennis in the weekend or swim and know your kids and have parties together. And this was in the past something that brought a lot of happiness because people didn't saw this kind of disconnect that creates so much barrier and unhappiness between us. And so for me, people I work with or teams I create are part of my extended family. And those who work with me know that I use this term a lot, extended family. And this is how I would see things work much better in the future. And when it comes to KPI, and with this I finish, maybe I give some ideas to others, and especially corporate executives and startuppers. I do have my personal KPIs with my clients. We define them at the beginning of my coaching program, and that might be like relationship with my wife, with my kid, with the way with my personal health. And so they quantify where I am in all this things, and we have a note based on that and what it means with segments. And then each month we give another note, and those are the KPIs that are reflective on the personal aspects of our life. Mental health, physical health, spiritual health, not just financial or business.
That's awesome.
Good.
That's very, very good. Yeah, we need to talk some more, Cristina, because I couldn't agree more with your vision and your intention of how we move forward.
Next time, I might invite you to my podcast.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we can co-host the podcast, because that
Yes,
sounds
There you
interesting
go.
too.
that would be the
So-
best.
So next week we'll have Lisa Gill. Lisa is a tough leadership trainer, and she also runs a podcast called
Metamorphosis.
Metamorphosis, or
Yes.
something about metamorphosis and leadership. Leadermorphosis, that's what it's called.
Oh, there you go.
And I've been in her podcast as well, and very smart, very nice person. So that'll be the person next week. So we're looking forward to that. And thanks to Cristina for all the energy that you brought to the podcast. I really appreciate that. And
My pleasure.
And with that, I think we're done.
Thank you again, Cristina.
Thank you also for inviting me. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.